What's up, gamers? So, we have a trade today. This is, I guess, not official yet. Woj is saying that there are still outstanding issues to be completed, so this is not quite done yet, but once we get something like this reported, we're pretty sure that it's going to go down, at least similarly to the initial reports here. So, might be more players, more picks included in this deal, but for now, we're going to work with this. Kristaps Porzingis to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Malcolm Brogdon in a 3-team trade going to the Clippers, and then the Clippers sending Marcus Morris, Amir Coffey, and the 30th pick for tomorrow's draft to the Washington Wizards. So, interesting 3-team deal, lots to talk about here. So I think this trade has a lot of ripple effects for potential other moves around the league that we can talk about. So let's start with Boston here. They're going to get Kristaps Porzingis and sending out Malcolm Brogdon and Danilo Gallinari. Now this makes perfect sense for the Celtics. They were pretty guard heavy at the top of their roster, right? I mean, you have those wings, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, that handle the ball a lot, on-ball guys. Not necessarily guards in a sense, but handle a lot of responsibilities of guards. And then you also have, all these other guys like Malcolm Brogdon, obviously he's going out now. Peyton Pritchard has been rumored for a trade this offseason as well. Guys like Marcus Smart. This roster was very guard-heavy. So it makes sense that they want to move one of them and see what they can get. Also, Derek White, I forgot to mention him as well. So, like I said, very guard-heavy. Makes sense that you would want to move one of them, and Brogdon seems like the odd guy out. Just one season in Boston, kind of underwhelming, didn't really make a huge impact on them. Can you name me one iconic Malcolm Brogdon moment from this playoff run? I don't think you can. So he didn't really make a huge impact on the team. So he's going to probably get sent out here and go to LA. So for Boston, they're swapping out, one of their guards, like I said, for a guy with a lot more size. Porzingis, I think, is going to fit like a glove on this roster. He's, spacing guy, stretch 4, stretch 5, whatever you want to call him. Really, good offensive center, a pretty solid rim protector as well. He can play the 4 or the 5. You can probably throw him out there next to Robert Williams. I'm excited to see what that looks like, assuming, of course, that Rob Williams does return to the team next year. I think Porzingis is a much better fit for what this Celtics team needed than Malcolm Brogdon, and so it makes perfect sense for them to send him out in this trade. Now, I assume that there's going to be probably some draft compensation coming from Boston. I find it hard to believe that they were able to get Porzingis for this little, I guess, because Brogdon doesn't seem like a super positive asset to me. Obviously, Danilo Gallinari, he hasn't played at all this year. He's got 1 year left on his contract coming off the ACL tear, so never got to see him suit up for Boston. So effectively, they're just trading out those 2 contracts, bringing in Porzingis. We could see him extended on a longer-term contract. He's going to opt in to his deal in order to make this trade happen, and the Celtics could potentially extend him as part of this trade and keep him around the team for a couple more years. I would not be surprised at all to see that happen. But very interesting trade. I think this makes a lot of sense for the Celtics. I really like this for them. Again, pending, seeing what kind of draft picks they're going to give up here, because I assume it has to be something. Maybe it's just a couple second-round picks, maybe a future first. But regardless, I don't think it'll be too much, and I really like this trade for Boston. So next I wanted to talk about the LA Clippers. Very, very interesting potential league-changing move from the Clippers. And the only reason I say that is because this really affects their plans at guard, I think. They were looking for a point guard to kind of come in for them, lead this team, and kind of organize everything. I think there's still going to be some more changes for the Clippers this summer. They have a lot of contracts that they could potentially shuffle around. This is probably just the first move of many. However, they were rumored to be interested in Chris Paul. Could this potentially take them out of the running for Chris Paul, considering they're trading for a different guy from the Wizards, and Chris Paul has not been included in this deal? That could potentially be interesting. It also maybe affects Russell Westbrook. Does he want to re-sign now? Do they want to bring him back now that they have Malcolm Brogdon on the team? Very interesting. Rumored that they would maybe play Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook together if they could, bring both of them back for next season, or trade for Chris Paul, obviously, bring Russell Westbrook back. But bringing in, Malcolm Brogdon as well, I don't think you can have all 3. So who is the other guy? Maybe neither of them end up coming to the Clippers. We're going to have to see on that. But what this trade does do is it gets rid of Marcus Morris. They're also sending out Amir Coffey in this trade for money matching purposes probably, and bringing in Malcolm Brogdon here. Like I said, they're looking for a guard, a guy who can kind of come in, settle things down. We're going to see what else they do this summer. There has been some rare rumors about Paul George. I don't know how true any of that's going to be, but this is a move for a veteran that does signal to me they're still at least trying to, restructure this roster and keep the core mostly together. So I'm not sure if they're going to trade Paul George. I kind of doubt it at this point. I assume Kawhi Leonard's going to be coming back. But everybody else is probably on the table here. You have Eric Gordon, non-guaranteed salary for this coming season. He could be used, sent out in a trade. He was a big piece of the potential Chris Paul deal. I don't know if that happens anymore. Norman Powell, you probably hold on to him. Marcus Morris, like I said, getting sent out here. You have these other salaries. Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, right in that mid-range there, $11, $12 million. That could be used very easily for salary matching for, a bigger name type of player. I assume Zubac stays around. He's on a pretty solid bargain contract for a center that's pretty good. Bones Highland hasn't really found his footing. He could potentially be sent out as a former first-round pick, maybe still holds some value. Terrence Mann, I also assume that he's going to stick around on this little extension that they brought him in on. But, as you can see, pretty movable salaries here. Eric Gordon, Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, all those guys potentially be packaged, traded in. Maybe they still do make a move for Chris Paul. Maybe it's somebody else. But making a trade for a guard is definitely very interesting and could impact the futures of Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook in a pretty significant way. And then for the Wizards here, this is another trade piece, another chip signaling that they are indeed going to enter a full rebuild moving into next year. Kyle Kuzma also declined his player option, so he's going to enter free agency. Porzingis obviously going to pick that up, and he's going to be traded. You'll see Bradley Beal here. Obviously, he's not on the team anymore from that trade to the Phoenix Suns. So they're stripping down this roster to the bare bones, getting rid of a lot of their veterans. That could signal, I talked about this in the last video, but Monte Morris, DeLon Wright, all these guys could potentially be available now. I would expect a lot of teams to call about them and see what they can do. The Wizards are probably going to be trading away most of their veterans and trying for a full youth movement here. So you're getting Marcus Morris on this roster. He could probably hang around for the year. Maybe you flip him at the deadline on an expiring contract if a contender wants to get him. He's not that good anymore, but maybe he could provide a stretch for scoring forward presence for somebody. So I'd imagine he'd be available throughout the year, but you probably hold on to him going into the season. You're also getting Amir Coffey, not super young anymore, but I think a guy on a cheaper contract that could potentially be attractive to some teams, so maybe you can get something out of him. And then you're getting a first-round pick, the last pick in the first round here, the 30th overall. Maybe something more, like I mentioned, I would assume Boston's throwing in a couple second-round picks or something else into this trade to make this happen. So you may be getting a couple of picks out of this if you're Washington. Get rid of Porzingis on the last year of his contract. He could have just opted out and left the team. So you're getting something for him. I think this is a pretty, I like this trade for the Wizards. I think it makes perfect sense for them to do this. If he's going to opt in, you might as well just trade him and see what you can get. And a late first-round pick, and like I said, maybe you can flip the players that you got into something else later down the line. So don't mind this at all for the Wizards. Another sign that they are going to indeed enter a full rebuild. So like I said, I would imagine most of the players on this roster outside of the guys still on their rookie contracts are going to be available for trade here pretty soon. I mean, seriously, I'm looking at this roster right now, and the only guys that I'm certain will be back on this team next year is probably Tenny Avdia. He's going to need an extension on his rookie deal. I'm not even 100% sure he'll be back, but he's maybe the guy that's shown the most for them. Johnny Davis, really disappointing rookie season, but probably run it back for at least one more season, see what he can give you. Corey Kispert, another guy going into his third year. He's been pretty solid. I'd probably hold on to him. But those three are really the only guys that I'm sure will be back because some of these guys are free agents here. Daniel Gafford, you could potentially trade him. I would assume he's back as well, but with that salary, you never know. Isaiah Todd and Jordan Goodwin were thrown into the Bradley Beal trade, so they're gone. And these other guys, end of the roster, who really cares? So this is going to be a pretty big roster turnover in Washington, and it's definitely long overdue. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what the additional details of this trade is. The way Woj is talking, it looks like there's going to be more involved, potentially even expanded to a fourth team. Maybe you expand this into a Chris Paul deal, something like that. Not sure, but, there could be a lot more details to work out. But for now, we're just going to assume with what's been reported that this is the trade. So there's my thoughts. That's about it. And I'll see you guys probably tomorrow with the draft breakdown. There's going to be lots of stuff happening the next couple days and weeks. So we'll be back on this channel. But yeah, see you guys.